Gary McCready, 39 Mohican. I've got a question, just a couple comments. What is the projected lifespan of the field itself, and how does that compare with the present Keeler field, if you have that information?
Is the question, how does it compare to Kaler? I'm not sure I understand that.
No, there's a present field, a football field that we have in the district that I think was about 7, 8 years old,
Yeah,
something like that.
2006. Yeah.
And so that's one thing that people will compare it to is, well, how will this field, did the technology improve, and if we see the football field starting to deteriorate, about how many years later would this field deteriorate, for instance?
Sure. The Kaler field, if I remember, was installed in 2006. Or thereabouts. It's probably in its sixth, probably entering its seventh season. So that was the original version or generation of Field Turf's product, which was called a slit film polyethylene fiber. So the fiber has been enhanced greatly, actually. The product itself remains the same, the backing, the fiber height, the type of rubber, the type of sand, the amounts of quantities on, but the fiber itself has been improved to actually last longer than that product would last. So we always try to keep the product lasting longer to justify the need and the use of these type of fields. So the life expectancy initially when the products came out was somewhere between 8 and 10 years. However, I just visited a field last Thursday that's 15 years old now in New Jersey, and it's time to replace it. That's why I was visiting it. But they still do play a full schedule of varsity and sub-varsity events on that field there. So if the field's maintained properly, it all depends how much usage you're getting on it. The new fiber itself should take you out at least somewhere around 12 years or so, with the full schedule that you're planning on doing. And the replacement, just to go back to what Beth had said, when the replacement is due, when you do initially the field, you're doing 2 parts of the field. Now you're building the drainage system and all the under drain structures and stone and pipe and concrete curbing. None of that is going to be redone when the surface or the skin actually wears out in, say, 10 or 12 years from now. So you're pulling the surface off, and we have been recycling the sand and rubber materials now and reutilizing that in the new field, which further benefits and reduces the cost of the replacement. So your cost for replacement is probably going to be somewhere around 50% to 50, depending on the type of system that has to get built to meet the stormwater regulations underneath. So somewhere in the vicinity, let's say 40 to 60% less than what it was initially for the initial cost of the project. And that should take you out, like Beth had said, there'll be many, many generations or cycles of whether you have to do anything in the ground. The turf will be, every 10 or 12 years you'll go into another cycle of turf, and it gets, so to substantiate the cost of it gets less and less because you're only doing the top.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, just to piggyback on that a little bit, the cost of our project doesn't just include the turf, but also the lighting and the bleachers and the retaining walls. So it wouldn't necessarily be 46% of what we're proposing for this field.
Very good.
Okay.
When I talk, it's only about the turf.
That's
I don't know
okay.
anything about the other stuff.
So what is the contractual warranty for the turf?
The warranty period is for 8 years.
How many?
8 years. Yeah, and that's not to say it's similar to buying a car. If you buy a high-end luxury car, they don't warranty the car for 15 years. It's similar to that. So there's responsibility in the warranty that the company assumes for an 8-year period. But we have, I don't know, maybe 2,000 fields that have exceeded the 8-year warranty period. So they clearly are lasting the amount of time that the company predicted that they would.
Right. And Jane, to the question you were just answering about clarifying the 40 to 60. Do we have broken out of the $3.3 million for the bond? What portion is the actual turf? Because that would give some indication as to what it might cost us to replace it in 10 or 12 years. I mean, if you extrapolated inflation and all.
Right.
So do we know that number? I don't know if I've heard that.
I don't, yeah. If we have reviewed it quite some time ago as we broke out the pieces. I know the lighting, I know the bleachers, but that exact piece of it.
Right. Maybe we ought to find that out.
Yeah. I mean, it generally, we've talked about replacing turf numbers, which is far below, maybe $500,000, something like that. But also, Gary, to your point about Kaler Stadium, is that just to note that Mike Morris has been out, constantly evaluating that field. It's in excellent condition. We just had a 5-year facility report beginning of the summer, and it isn't even on our list for the next 5 years. They're really doing a great job of maintaining it. It's in excellent shape. We are planning and budgeting for it, but we're not within the next 5 years looking that we're going to need to replace it.
Okay, thanks. And just a couple more comments. There are some things that I've been mainly following this so far online, and there are some things you learn online and some things you don't. One of the things that I didn't learn online, but maybe the numbers are there, but I saw the numbers here. Of course, I like numbers, and the relative like lighting versus what is on the field versus directly off the field with the new technology. That did mean something to me, but what I did see online, which unfortunately I'm not sure why you didn't pick out that picture here, is the picture you have, I guess, supplied by a manufacturer of a before and after, showing a field that is lit with traditional lighting and then the field that is lit with the new lighting, and you can definitely see the shadows. I even published the f-stop settings of the camera that took it, but it was it's really easily visible as to what the lighting will and will not do. So I'd say definitely go online to check out that. And it seems that really this could almost be described as theatrical lighting, and that might be a good idea to almost publicize, is that the same way that you use lighting in an auditorium just to light certain spots, that's basically what it appears that you're doing here. So this is really, and of course you could say sports is a stage, so there you go. You are lighting the stage that the players are on. Now, the other thing to consider is that in the same way that, a lot of, people, when they shop for a community, shop for schools, they do look at the fields, and if anyone's ever taken kids to other town, there is field envy, and, when you come to a town that does have good fields and you're thinking of maybe moving there, that is, definitely one selling point. But I think the most important thing to think of is that, and for a board, is that it's real easy for a board to do something that benefits the majority. It's like a no-brainer, roads without potholes, a good, police force, fire department. No, those are all no-brainers to maintain. It's harder for a board to decide what do they do to serve perhaps a minority of its users or its constituency. But in this case, the other number that somewhat surprised me, even though I heard about it from being on the board a while, is that out of everyone, all the kids at the high school, 75% actually participate in some organized sport, and that is really a majority. I mean, you're not going to be playing basketball or swimming on this field, but it is a large percentage that are athletically active, and more importantly, I believe it'd be close to 100% of the students in phys ed would actually be using those fields, which may be lost even on some people who have kids in the school system. But yes, that if their kids go through the school system through to the high school, their kids will be benefiting either being in an athletic program or simply being in phys ed. So that may be another thing that you want to communicate, so that yes, it's just not for just a limited subset of users, but will be enjoyed by the majority of those who go through the high school. So again, keep up the good work. No, it's a tough decision to decide, when you have something that doesn't necessarily benefit everybody, what you want to spend your money on.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Sharon Stockwell, 100 Nelson Place. In looking at this information for the bond referendum, I had a lot of questions initially, and I believe that the board has done a good job of providing information, and I think that a lot of my questions have been answered by this blue brochure, which you have. I had many questions, including, why now? Would we be going out for the bond? Why not have it on a regular election day where you might have a better voter turnout? Why not use the money for staffing and technology versus for capital improvements? And why now do we need to replace the roofs? Why haven't we been doing that more along, the past years. The one question that I have not heard, and the one question that I would very much like an answer for, is why are these projects not separated? Why are they bundled together at this time?
We all want to answer that question. So we have talked about that considerably, and we continue to come back to the discussion that both of these projects have been in facilities for 2 to 3 years. And when we started, we had a field study done in 2009, and we started to explore solar end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And at that time, we brought it forward to the strategic planning. We were looking for alternative funding. We looked for solar for the roofs. We looked for grants for fields. We took a look at all of our fields. And when we came to the point where we ran out of options for the solar, we started the discussion of what else can we do. And it was really those two capital projects that were the most important. And that's where, in facilities, we had the discussion that this was what the bond referendum, would be for the priority for the district. Interestingly, just as a side note, as I've done research everywhere, I search the web constantly, I searched bond referendums in other districts, and it's interesting to note that I have found that a lot of bond referendums have been for exactly what we're doing. And we didn't know that before we went out for a referendum, but there are two needs that obviously many districts are being faced with. And it's the fields and their facilities, primarily their roofs, because it is outside our ability to save. And I'm sure, if somebody else wants to answer differently, but that was...
And I'd add, it's a good question, it's a tough question, and the board was not unanimous. And the one thing that was clear was that once we determined that we were putting both projects on the referendum as one vote, this board unanimously stood behind putting it on the referendum. We all unanimously agree that these projects are the right thing to do for the district, and that's why we are here where we are.
I have to say that when I looked at this, I see these as two different categories. I see the roof project as a maintenance requirement. I have to say I see the turf lighted field as an optional project. I, as a parent and a taxpayer, do not put them in the same category. I do see them as two separate and distinct projects. I'm very conflicted. I've lived here for 10 years. I've always voted yes on every single Board of Ed question. I'm very conflicted this time. $16.7 million is a lot of money. And I would feel better about a bond referendum that separated these. Second point that I wanted to make is I'm glad the gentleman from the turf company answered some other questions that I have not heard brought up or provided in the information. And that is, what is the lifespan of the actual turf field? What is the maintenance schedule? And one of the things that came to my attention last week was something on the front page of the Westfield Leader, and it was during the town council meeting, in that Mr. Gilday, who is our town administrator, said that the town council was reviewing a resolution to allow the Recreation Commission to apply for matching fund grants from Union County from the Kids Recreation Trust Fund. The town will apply for $387,500 for the repair of Sidfay and Houlihan turf fields. Mr. Gilday told the council that it is, quote, nearing the time that the turf field has to be replaced, unquote, and that the other half of the money needed to repair these turf fields at Sidway Houlihan would come up, the other half of the money would come from the trust fund, which has been made up of the user fees in town. So the town is looking at $500,000 for half of the cost to repair Sidway Houlihan, and they're making up the other difference from the user fees that we all pay when our children, use the fields for soccer and all of the town recreation programs. So that's a good deal of money, considering that the Sidway Houlihan fields are only 7 years old, excuse me.
They're about a year older than Kaler, I think, yeah.
I'm sorry?
They're about a year older than Kaler, I think. And also a different field, different manufacturer.
Different company, different manufacturer, different synthetic material. Okay. So the point that I'm making is that I had not seen the information until I heard the gentleman speak this evening about the lifespan, the maintenance schedule, the maintenance costs. I think we need to be mindful that the town is going to a grant request to ask for $387,500, which is only 50% of the cost of replacing the actual turf
Two
at
fields.
Sidway Houlihan.
Also, it's two
Two
fields.
fields. Two fields.
Right, I think that was somewhat what Kerry was talking about before, that the replacement cost is quite a bit less because all you are doing is replacing the turf. So that replacement cost, I think that was what Kerry was addressing.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we've talked about in facilities is what I'll call a sinking fund or a replacement fund, and the need for that each year, starting in year one, so that we'll estimate what we believe we'll need to replace the upper layer or the upper 2 layers and save each year to do that. So that, as was mentioned, the 2 fields, the cost that you referenced is for 2 fields that the town's looking at. And our expectation of ourselves is that we allocate funds each year to the replacement cost of the field.
And I think maybe it might also be important to note that we certainly work with the town on a lot of programs. And so we had joined with the town looking at Jefferson Field, looking to repair that field. That's used for very different surface. We don't have high
Right.
school students playing there. We generally have the little ones playing there. So working with them, we could not have applied for a county grant on our own because we're a school district, but working with the town, we were able to apply and receive a grant for part of the funds, and the other part of the funds for that field are going to be paid for by user fees, because the user fees that are collected by the town also are collected on our fields. So that's why we do work with the town, and we'll continue to do that going forward. So we may very well be looking for a very similar structure. Right now, Kaler is in very good shape. It has been maintained well. It was a good field to start with, and it's been maintained well. So going forward, certainly may be the type of arrangement or agreement that we would be looking to try to do.
And I do understand that these projects are separate companies. I mean, they're separate and distinct. But one of the things that concerns me is that although they're separate projects, the money for these is coming from this same wallet. So if the Sidway Houlihan ends up, not receiving that grant money from Union County, later on, is that going to be something else that is passed on to the parents and the taxpayers of Westfield? That's another reason that I would like to see this bond separated with the 2 projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the same grant. Yeah.
one serious question, one
Could-
comment.
I'm sorry. could
Oh,
you
I'm
just-
sorry, Maureen Keough, 419 East Dudley Avenue.
Thank you.
I have one question from my daughter that she told me to ask you, and one rhetorical question at the end. First question is, I probably didn't spend enough time on the website before I came here, but of the 16.9 million total, what percentage of that bond goes toward the roof, and what percentage goes toward the turf and lights?
You know the percentage? It's about 25%. Yeah.
Well, it's 13 point.
25?
Yes, 13,
Yeah.
So 75 on the roof? and-
3.2 or something?
Yes, it's about 75% for the roofs and 25% for the turf field.
Okay. Okay, my daughter's question, because she runs winter track, and she and her fellow high school students were talking about this today at lunch. Why not light Keller instead of the high school field? She thought there were more users and fewer neighbors, and I had to ask that question for her.
Sure. Want to answer?
You can.
I'll start.
You can start
So,
off.
when we decided to undertake a turf field, it was for several reasons, but the overarching reason was to increase capacity. And the high school field, as distinct from Keeler, accommodates two softball fields, for example. Will accommodate state regulation games. Is different multi-purposes. And we can run two practices side by side at the high school field. And as we looked at increasing capacity, we looked at the best way to increase the capacity of that project, because we know we wanted to do that project. And the answer was to light the field, to maximize the number of hours for usage on that field. It's also going to be the high school field. So yes, student athletes can go down the road to Keeler. They can't go down the road to Keeler and do the same things, but we will be able to have our student athletes from the high school use the field for extended hours. And that was important to us, to create that kind of an environment, kind of an atmosphere, that we have everything right there. Is there anything to add?
Okay, my last rhetorical question, if someone actually does manage to hack the lighting system, are you going to give the neighbors the phone number to call your company in case?
There will be ample ways to reach the people in control of the lighting. So if there is something wrong, I fully expect that enough people will hear about it, including myself, that it will get resolved in quick order.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan Galligan, 651 Shackamaxon. My question is more on the total project, talking specifically how you guys have accounted for cost overruns. Anybody that's ever hired a roofer knows there's always cost overruns. The decking always needs to be redone, something along those lines. Specifically, citing Sid Fay Houlihan, when they did the excavation for that, they uncovered that it was built on backfill. It cost the town another almost $100,000 in additional excavation costs. When Kaler Field was built, the next summer there was a storm. The field bubbled up, the track bubbled up, lots of work. I assume was covered by an insurance company, but work that has to be done. The high school, through the middle of the field and under the parking lot, there's a 25-foot wide storm sewer right away. Used to be a brook, was backfilled. The school was built on backfilled wetlands. Has that been established in an environmental study? Do we know what we're going to be digging into? Those costs will be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if something like that is discovered.
You absolutely bring up good points. When you're going to consider any kind of construction, you can't just guess.
Yeah.
So, but to answer it a little more deeply than that, I'd like to maybe ask George Duthie.
So, with such great support from our consultants, I don't get a chance to say too much, so I'm glad I have a question I can answer finally. But it was two very good questions, and I'll answer them in the order they were asked. And the first question was, what about cost overruns? Well, every construction project has contingency built into it. And we base a contingency percentage on projects of similar types we've done in the past, we have experience with, and we consult with the folks too, the experts we had here earlier. So we have contingency built into the project for the types of situations you identified. Also, you mentioned about soils. Well, we have done already quite a bit of due diligence work, both in regards to the roofs and in regards to the site at the high school. So soil sampling has been done, geotechnical testing has been done, survey work has already been done. A high probability that any type of situation like that will have already been uncovered. We've sampled the soils. We've looked at conditions that could occur during the construction that could have the type of effects and undesirable consequences you described. So, those two things, the contingency built into the project, as well as the due diligence done at the beginning, we hope will maximize our chances of success. Okay?
Thank you.
I can assure you, we are aware of the two 60-inch storm sewers that are running through the site. We've already spoken with the municipality, and they have assured us that the two sewers are in good shape and suitable for us to build on top of them. When you saw the rendering up on the screen, you saw that there's a retaining wall around the whole field. The reason that the field is being built up is so that we can respect the integrity of those two pipes running under it. So that's just an additional assurance to let you know that we have done our due diligence, we've done our feasibility studies, and all of that is taken into account into the schematic planning that we've done.
And the town literally inspected those pipes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else? Yes.
Amy Chen, 459 Whittier. My question has to do with, the whole thing started with going for solar for the put on the roofs, but I don't see anything in this about actually doing that last step, which is the solar panels for the roof. What is the board's intention with that? Is it not moving forward later?
Sure. So I could tell you unequivocally, once we have new roofs, we will relook at solar. The district won't incur additional costs for solar. They would be paid for and built into a solar project. So from our perspective, it's only a way to save money through lowering energy costs. We tried really hard to get solar on our roofs for a couple of years. A lot of work went into it. And to hear, including the county, who looked at our roofs in detail, to hear the county and company after company tell us that they really can't do a fulsome project on our roofs that would allow them to make a profit and allow us to save costs on energy, because we were willing to say, just fix the roofs, keep our energy costs constant. And they couldn't even do that. So yes, there's nothing they need to do differently when they build the roofs, when they fix the roofs, replace the roofs. For solar, they will be solar ready, but that doesn't mean much. It just means the roofs are in great shape and they can withstand a 15-year power purchase agreement, and that will be very attractive to multiple solar developers, in my opinion.
So the roofs will be prepped to have the leads down into the schools so that the power can be run into the schools, or?
No, George, you tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but the solar power developer will actually come along and do what they need to do. We don't need to do really advanced work for solar company to come along. George knows that we're looking to solar, so if there's something obvious or prudent that we should do, he'll tell us. But no, it's not like we accounted for a lot of additional cost, or really any additional cost, to be solar ready.
Okay. And then looking at a time frame out, is that something that would then happen in 2014 or 2020? I don't know, just looking at the time frame on it.
I would push for 2013, but I've been solar ready for quite a while. If we achieve the roof time frame we want, it is 2013, right?
It is. It's
so
summer.
by the end of next summer. So I don't know that we would do the solar work while school's in session, so perhaps it would be that following summer. But we'll take that one step at a time with an eye to getting it done as soon as possible.
I know you had spoken to a lot of solar companies in preparation of the project. Did they provide you with any kind of numbers as to how much it would help contain the energy costs within the district to move to a solar-powered type system?
Well, they gave us what they thought, and then when they did the analysis of the roof work, what they thought quickly got eaten up.
Okay.
So they got to a point where they couldn't save us money and they couldn't make money. I don't remember the initial estimates, which I think were based on, sort of rules of thumb for roofs our size, assuming they could sustain a project. George, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but
I remember the final numbers of the solar project.
yeah.
The solar market, you should know about the solar market.
Yeah.
Because it is in flux right now in New Jersey, and that's something we should all be aware of.
Right.
Everyone's read the paper and seen the news about the solar industry in New Jersey. It's had some pitfalls over the past couple of years. But things are looking up with the passage of some new legislation this year, signature by the governor. And I think BOE right now is going to start on that was dormant for quite some time because they couldn't get the commitment from the financiers. And now they have a commitment and they're moving forward. So it's good news and it bodes well for Westfield's future solar project.
Okay. So there's hope then that some of the cost of the new roofs will help, with the moving to the solar, being able to install that will help reduce the cost of the bonds then, because of the fact that the district itself will be saving money, hopefully a little bit each year on the energy costs moving forward then.
It won't be a dollar-for-dollar offset
No.
to the bonds, but it won't, you don't take the solar savings and apply them to the bonds.
Correct.
But it's something else that we
But
can
it's
apply
extra
them
money
to.
that could be
Yes.
used in the district to help
Correct.
cover the
Absolutely.
cost of,
It
say,
is.
the maintenance on the field that we're going to be installing also.
It's a savings on an
Right.
expense that will have meaningful results to the
Right.
district.
Right.
Yes.
And then when I did do the calculation, I was thinking that of the so-called $45 that you were saying was going to cost every family, only about 9 of that actually goes towards the field. So, I mean, that's a relatively small cost to be added onto the property taxes to give every high school student the opportunity to play on a field that will be in very good shape. Because I do know that that current field that's there tends to get soggy easily on rainy days and makes for very messy first period gym classes. So, as I've seen my kids come home with sneakers, and I'm like, where were you? On the school field.
It's
So,
$8 the first year.
yeah.
It's $18 then for several years. So you're correct. It's a low number relative to the total
So,
for the field.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ruth Maloney, 89 Summit Court.
One second, Ruth. if I
Yeah,
may.
sure.
I just wanted to comment something that Amy brought up, was that we will also incur additional savings because of energy efficiency, because of the insulation that will be
Absolutely.
included in the roof. So
That's a good
even
point.
before the solar, if the bond were to pass and if we were to move on with solar, but even before that happens, we would incur some efficiency savings because of the insulation.
Correct. Good point. Thank you. Ruth.
I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that were said tonight. One person mentioned about this being optional, about the turf versus a necessity, for the roofs. And I'm hearing that a lot as well. That's something that's coming up quite a bit. But I think anybody who has been around as long as I have, I guess, is the best way to say it, and has gone to other towns and participated in some of the sports that we do offer, knows that it's not as optional as you may think. For instance, Chatham is a good comparable town, but they have 10,000 fewer people in their town. They have 4 turf fields. 3 of those are regulation. We have what most people perceive to be 3 turf fields in this town, but only 1 of them is regulation size. So only 1 of them can accommodate all of our high school sports for games. Practices maybe, but not games. And my daughter plays field hockey. She was at Keller the other day, and they had the field hockey team, the cross-country team, the cheerleaders, and soccer teams all there. And the soccer team was a little distracting to the field hockey players. So I just want to say that I think the people who think that this is not a necessity maybe aren't as informed about what's going on in the athletic world here in Westfield, because we are way behind other towns in what we have, and we just don't have what we need to accommodate what's going on. And that's both high school and with a lot of the sports organizations. And the other point I wanted to make about a comment that was made was about Keller accommodating more athletes. It actually accommodates fewer, because softball is not accommodated at all. That's an organization I'm involved with. And so this turf field would really benefit the softball program, because spring, of course, is a rainy time of year. Every time it rains, we get canceled both the day of and quite often the day after, because there's no drainage. So Keller does not accommodate more sports. It actually excludes the whole softball world, and we're already a tiny piece of the pie, so we kind of feel like it's our turn. It's our time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, I'm Paul Haru, 187 Lincoln Road, and I'm here as a concerned and interested citizen and Westfield resident for over 20 years. I don't have a probing question. I don't even have a complaint. So I do want to say that I recognize the views of both sides, because I think that you're very informed. I was impressed with Ms. Stockwell, with your study on the issue. And depending on the perspective you come at this issue, you might be a parent of an athlete, and you might be a parent of a non-athlete, and we'll have different views about what's really needed in this town. I happen to be a parent of an athlete, 3 athletes, great products of Westfield sports, held together by great trainers, patched them together, babied them way too much for me, but so I look at it from an athletic perspective, but I recognize that there are other views, and the coupling of this bond issue is a question that has been asked a lot, and I commend all of you for weathering through those questions and coming up with answers. Probably not always satisfactory to everybody, but you've tried to come up with the best answer. So I'm here to say thank you. Thank you to this board for your perseverance, for really plowing through this issue, both for the roof. We all need a roof. It's a boring cost. I got to replace my roof, and it's not fun. You don't see it, but you need it. But certainly for the athletic fields, it is also a need. I agree with Ms. Maloney's views as well. This is a need. It is a facility improvement for this town. And whether we want to compare ourselves to other towns or not, I look to see the level of participation we have in this town in athletics, at this school, in the Westfield program is huge, and it's growing. So this is a need. This is a facility improvement need, and I applaud you for addressing that need as well now. Lighting is sensitive, but lighting has improved tremendously since we started looking at this issue years ago. And I think that the solution that's being provided is a very workable solution for the community. So I appreciate your diligence, your perseverance, your patience, your study of the issue, your analysis, and the time, and I know countless of hours in meetings that you spent and that your predecessors have spent in preparing and paving the way for this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Shireen Gobran. I'm a relatively new resident of Westfield at 517 North Chestnut. And there was a brief comment made that the board had looked at a number of different projects, and I'm curious to know what those projects are, because this is my first time seeing a bond referendum since my residency here in Westfield. I have not been a resident of a suburb prior to coming to Westfield, so I don't know what the other projects are that you looked at and that you feel are of a different priority than the 2 that we're addressing in this bond referendum.
those were really the two largest capital improvement projects. A lot of the projects that we've looked at over the past several years, we had to put on hold.
Such as, I'm sorry, Becca.
Well, a lot of them that we addressed this summer. The 30 maintenance projects that we talked about at our last meeting, that we were able to provide funding through because of cost containments, boilers, windows, paving, bathrooms, painting.
Air conditioning of
air
the buildings?
conditioning. Well, that would be a lot. That is actually something that long range, that facilities is looking at.
What is, I'm just curious, I'm only knowing, I guess you could say I hail from the Philadelphia area. I was just visiting my parents in the main line, and I think Lower Merion, spanking new high school. So I'm just curious, what would it take to perhaps,
You know,
I don't know if that's a priority. That's why I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what the priorities are in terms of the urgency of these projects.
No, that wouldn't necessarily bubble up to the priority, but it's something that is recognized.
So what
Any
are
of-
the so when you have your
So-
short list, what are your priorities?
In the facilities, it would be the roofs.
I don't know if it's, I mean, when you look at capital projects, are they just facilities?
That would be facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
As you said, a number of them were, we were able to accomplish this summer, the ones that were listed. There are other ones similar to those, other windows, other doors, other boilers, things like that, which we will be able to do under the operating budget. And we reviewed all those. We looked at the entire 5-year maintenance plan, looking at every building. But a lot of those, we said, well, those will be able to be addressed going forward in an operating budget. But we went through looking, are there some that could not be accomplished? But the two that we came up with are these two.
So a bond referendum is used for capital, only capital improvement that can't be covered by the operating budget. So, right? So, for example, so whether it's update, I just put out there the air conditioning, for example. So air conditioning cannot be covered by the operating budget and is not considered a priority. Now, these are the priorities set up based on the urgency, like the lifespan of the equipment, or is it more the?
It could be based on enrollment of a certain age group. A couple of 4 years ago was Lincoln
Well,
School.
this room
Yeah,
is
this
an
one-
example of a priority from the district several years ago,
Right.
due to enrollment increase.
Exactly. And Lincoln School is the early childhood education center now for Westfield. 4 or 5 years ago, there were kindergartens in each of the schools, and the board at that time felt it was a priority to make, number one, make use of a facility that wasn't being used, and to alleviate some of the enrollment issues at some of the elementary schools by consolidating early childhood into one school. So that was an example as a priority back then.
So in terms of the buildings that we have right now, or the capital, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about the roofs are the main ones. So you're saying boilers we've handled, windows. So you're saying so air conditioning is not part of it at all.
So we could try to address air conditioning. Okay, for example, as we said, this room is an example of part of a renovation done to an old school, part of one. And if you notice, there's air conditioning. So we continue to look for ways to increase air conditioning in our schools. One of the projects this summer was air conditioning in the last library in the district. All the others had air conditioning. This one did not. We were able to put it in there. So we look with the high school bond referendum. We were able to air condition a number of places in the high school that had never been air conditioned. So we are constantly looking for ways to do that. And is air conditioning still on the list that we're looking at? Absolutely. And the way that we've been doing it so far is by looking for avenues to make sure that that happens in various places. And we'll continue to look at it. And can I predict exactly what the board and the facilities committee will find, working with the architect for what else we can do for air conditioning? No, it's definitely on the list. And we continue to do it as recently as this past summer to increase that.
But it's not it's not a facility-wide, it's not like when we change roofs of all the buildings, it's not like it's going to be done for
No.
all the buildings, it's
No.
not?
No.
No, that's
No.
why I'm asking, I'm
Yeah,
just asking a
absolutely.
question.
If that's your
all. That's all.
question, the answer is no.
Okay.
And it's a little difficult to answer the question of what is the priority, because it's actually a process. And so every year, the superintendent and the buildings and grounds supervisor look at all the buildings. And they don't do that alone, they do that with the principal of each building. And the principal talks to them about what they need. They bring that list back to the facilities committee. They also overlay on that what the student population is and what the needs of the students are with respect to curriculum, what we need in the classrooms, et cetera. So it's really it's a combination of things coming together. So, you know, that's one large part of the process. The other thing is, just as Jane mentioned, specific things. It wasn't as if we said this year, we need a boiler over at Franklin School. That's our priority. That's been on the list a long time. So we did 2 boilers this year. We did a lot of paving over the past couple of years. We helped alleviate a parking problem that's been around a long time. We helped alleviate a ventilation problem that's been a problem for a long time. I believe, just a sort of a one-off example, we replaced a dishwasher that needed replacement. Well, I can't tell you we've talked about that one a long time, but it pops up and suddenly it's an emergency. So you can't really say, well, what's your priority? But there are these things percolating, and we do have a 5-year plan, which we talk about publicly. So all of this information is out there.
Actually, it's on our website.
And
Yes.
you may want to
It's
say
on our
that
website.
we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 or $2.7 million over the last 12 months on various projects, including all the ones Rich just talked about.
Right.
And I think a comment is necessary here about the maintenance staff, because in addition to the roofs that have been past their useful lives for a good number of years, also the boilers are probably extended as well. So it brought us some time to do other projects, and now actually 3 boilers, right? I mean, Franklin has 2 and McKinley has 1 that just couldn't wait any longer. So
I've been on boards, I've been on building boards, and these projects, you're right, the maintenance staff comes together, we decide what's the lifespan, so, but usually we end up having, okay, we know, like, in 5 years' time, we're gonna need to do this, in 3 years' time, we're gonna need to do that. We may have to raise money from all the shareholders to cover the cost. So I'm just basically asking the question of, over the next 5 years, what are you seeing that you need to raise money for?
So that plan is
That's
actually
all.
up on our website. If you go to the westfieldnjk12.org and click on 5-year facilities plan, we presented that at the beginning of the summer. So that will kind of help walk you through that.
Right, but I was just trying to figure out how these 2 points came up to rise to the
Well,
top
through that
of
process,
to the
through
top
that
of the
annual
pack.
evaluations. And those were 2 projects that we could not fund through our operating budget.
And I think your question helps underscore the point of why one bond, because as a member of the facilities committee, as a member of the board, we felt these priorities in a long-range, kind of a long-term view, were both necessities at this point. As you just heard some of these examples, a lot of these capital improvement projects were, I don't know the combination, but there wasn't just one bond for the early childhood. There was a number of things in there that board, that facilities committee at that point felt they were equal priority, and that's exactly where we didn't come down unanimous. The facilities committee was not even unanimous in terms of one, but overall, I think we made the right decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Board members?
I don't have a question. I just want to let people know that there is an absentee ballot link on our website if you are not in district on Monday, September 24th. And I think the absentee ballots need to come in by September 17th, so that's a little less than a week from today. But I just wanted people to understand that that was also available on the website.
Thank you. Any other comments on the roofs, turf field, bond referendum from the public or the board? All right, thanks very much, everyone. With that, I'd ask that the board approve.
See you, Rich.
Talking about air conditioning, I'm freezing.
I am freezing too.
I know, it's cold.
What's that? All right. I'd ask the board approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on August 28th, 2012, and private minutes of August 28th, 2012. All in favor?
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Time out.
Time out.
I need a second, and then I need discussion. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere.
You asked for approval, you didn't ask for put a second.
Second. Anyone?
Second.
Comments? Changes, corrections? Ginny?
Page 1, recognizing the public, I think, Mr. Matesic, you did that? I don't think
Yes.
Mr. Finn took over for you.
He tried.
I didn't think
It was
you
a
needed
failed-
to, I
it
think
was a
you were
failed
there.
coup.
Yes.
You were there, right?
Yes, thank you.
All right, and page 14, facilities neglects to memorialize the presentation that Ms. Clancy gave us at the meeting, which was considerable about the bond.
Right.
Good catch.
We
Yeah.
can find it in the synopsis.
Yes.
And also, there was a summer projects PowerPoint, a bond discussion, and high school parking, and followed by comments from 4 members of the public.
All right.
I think that it's worthwhile because we use the minutes as the documentation to memorialize our conversations
100%.
over
Good point.
time.
Thank you.
So I would be happy to work with whoever's going to write them.
Great.
So, should we revise them and re-vote next time? So I will withdraw my motion.
What about private session? We're gonna put that up, we're gonna do it together.
No, I'll withdraw for both, and we can approve both
Thank
at the
you.
next meeting. No, thank you.
So I have to abstain from private session.
With that, we can go to personnel. Jane?
Okay, I would like to make a motion to ask for the board's approval of personnel items number 1 through 33. Second?
Second. Second.
Friedman?
Mark?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Nope.
Comments? Jenny?
Yes. Mrs. Ball has left the area. I had some questions on the item number 6, the job description for the business administrator.
That's a big,
So, Mrs. Ball, we're looking at the,
there she is.
we're looking at the
That
job
was quick,
description.
wow.
The job description for the school business administrator, and I think Mrs. Lights has some observations or questions.
Item number 11 has a phrase, ensures proper maintenance of district-owned buses. That could be a catch-all. We don't own any buses, I don't think, do we?
I believe that's correct, that it is a catch-all, and at the moment, we do not.
My thinking is it could always be added if we owned them, because that would be a big departure from our current process, but
Indeed.
it doesn't matter to me one way or the other, except that I was surprised to find it in there.
I would leave it in just because there could be, at some point, you might want to purchase one bus or one small bus instead of having.
A minivan?
Job descriptions, you might as well just, might as well just use it.
We're all ready to go. Item number 24 administers the oath of office to newly elected board members. Is that a departure from our current job description?
No. It exists in state job descriptions for business administrators because they are able to administer the oath of office. In this district, it's been customary for the board attorney to do so, but leaving it in would allow that, should the occasion ever arise that were not possible, that the business administrator would be able to do that.
Is there a way to say that so that the opportunity is there but not the requirement? I'm not sure how this reads. It reads as it's an obligation.
What if it were just amended to say responsible for the administration of the oath, and to the extent he or she delegates those duties to the board attorney, then?
That's acceptable.
We could do that.
Dana doesn't want the job anymore.
That's,
Then
Not what she
items,
signed up for.
items number 25 through 29 reference the county superintendent, of which there is no more office. This might be in statute and it might be in regulation.
That's correct. the
And we
the
don't have
state-
guidance of anything else.
Right, the state has not yet changed the regulation of legislation. The county structure actually still exists. They are saying it is going to change, well, part of it is going to change, but not all of it. There still will be county offices. It may well be that it will not be, that they will change the statutes so that it does not say county superintendent, but they have not yet done so.
Well, even so, more currently, it's executive county
That's true.
superintendent, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we could say or designee, but I understand that the state is changing its structure. It seemed like a misnomer, an older.
Right, or could you say appropriate state official?
Yeah.
Yes, I would do that.
I want to make sure we're in compliance, absolutely.
Right.
But
And again, you not necessarily want to bring it back
No.
if the state changes the law in a
I don't
couple
want to
months.
have to do something that they no longer provide for or require. Okay. I don't need to see those before I vote,
All right. I think we can just assume those will be made.
but I'm sure you'll send us an updated version.
We will.
Thank you.
Anything else on personnel? All right. Oh, I'm sorry, hang on.
Number 29, the Roosevelt School Science Olympiad, is that a stipend?
No, it is
It's a class,
an
right?
additional class that is taught, yes.
And is that a 1/5?
That is a 1/5, yes.
Okay.
Actually, that would be if the course were a full year. He actually teaches it for a half year, so the amount
So
is
it's a
actually
1/5.
half of that, right?
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Richard Jessup?
Yes.
David Finn?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Shostak?
Yes.
Jenny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oley? Yes. Rich Slater?
Yes. Thank you. Brings us to facilities. Jane?
Okay, I'd like to ask the board, I make a motion to ask for the board's approval of facilities item number 1.
Second, Mrs. Lights.
This is just correcting amounts that we've already approved before. No questions? Comments? Vote.
Richard Jessup?
Yes.
David Finn?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Shostak?
Yes.
Jenny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oley? Yes. Rich Slater?
Yes.
And Rich, just a couple other updates from
Please,
facilities.
sure.
First update, we all received in our packet information regarding our energy efficiency plan, and I just wanted to talk about that for a second because it is extraordinary, and the public should be aware of what an incredible job 2 men in our district who are energy managers, Michael Pate and Tony Kukuro, are doing to help contain costs, and it's really just through educating our staff, and that we should also thank all of the staff in all of our buildings for following through on their education, because since July 2006, we have produced over $2 million in saving on our electricity and natural gas bills, which is a 30% reduction in energy costs, and that really is phenomenal. And this came out of facilities back then in 2006, and a small program, and we thought, great, no cost to the district, we'll save a little bit of money in energy, and they have done such an incredible job. And the one thing that they said is that this program will be successful if you hire really good energy managers, and that's what we did, and now we're saving $2 million since that time. So thank you very much to them and the staff.
And because of the training they've received and the knowledge they've gained, so every time we do make a decision, for example, the boilers we spoke about, well, the boilers, we made sure that the boilers and the system is the energy efficient one. The focus is always on that. The dishwasher that was described, we make sure that the dishwasher is purchased that is energy efficient. So their hand is in a lot in the district. They pay attention to detail, and they make sure we're all doing the same.
Thank you. And just another update, the ribbon cutting for the new fitness center was last week, and I just wanted to make note that it was a wonderful evening, and the fitness center is packed with equipment that I will never use, but our students will thrive on them, our physical education students, our athletes, and over $175,000 was raised, and it is because of the community coming together and recognizing that there was a real need for our students and our athletes. It was spearheaded by Steve Simcox and Sandy Mamery, and they took it to the community, they brought it to the Board of Ed through the boosters, through all of the athletic programs, through private donors, and it really shows in what an extraordinary place that is. So also some good news, and I'm sure if you wanted to stop by and take a visit sometime, that would be fine. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Long-range planning.
No
Ginny.
committee report, but I would like to put a meeting on the calendar. So we'll get that going. We'll get that going early October.
Great. Thank you. Policies, Roseanne?
Yes. There are 3 policies up for first reading that have to do with curriculum. Those are 2200, 2230, and 3240. And there has been a request to table that so SIP can discuss it. Although the policy committee did individually review it, collectively discuss it. We followed the guidance from our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Paul Panera. We followed the guidelines in Strauss-Esme as they appear to the new codes and statutes. However, because of the time, and we have a lot more to do as a board, I would like to table those 3 and have SIP review them before the whole board. Just, do I need a second for that? Or is that, I could just do that?
No,
If that's
just don't-
okay with
Yeah, just don't
everybody,
make
is
it part
that
of the
okay?
motion. Yep,
Okay.
it's fine.
Now I would like to move for first reading the following 3 policies: 6422, 6424, and 9130. Are there any questions? Yeah, Jenny?
Yes, on the public complaint grievance policy 9130.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there were some words that I would like to discuss with you, but I can do that offline.
Okay.
They're not material. In fact, it's the word material.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, we'll do that.
But they're not, they're not germane to change the
Okay.
information.
Are there any other questions or comments? There were not very many revisions in either of these policies, but they were relooked at, and we used our policies as well as the Strauss-Esme policies and made some minor revisions that we felt made the policy more clear and were again in line with current statute and codes. So if there are no further questions, we can vote.
Yes.
David Finn?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirstead?
Yes.
Janie Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olers? Yes. Mitch Slater?
Yes.
I would also now like to ask the board to affirm the superintendent's decision on 12E18 for the reasons set forth therein.
Second. Finn.
Oh,
Rich Massacre?
Yes.
David Finn?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirstead?
yes.
Janie Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Olers? Yes. Mitch Slater?
Anything else, Roseanne?
That's all.
That's all. Curriculum, instruction, and programs. Ann?
We will be meeting Thursday, and members of the committee, please remember it's 1:15. We've changed the time.
Thank you very much. Finance, I'd ask the board to consider Finance Motion 1, 1A, which was at your desk, 2, 3, we're removing 4 from the agenda. That's the non-public technology agreement. We're still looking at that one. And then 5 through 14.
Second.
Thank you. Dana, would you like to just talk about the additional one and then the non-public
Sure.
motions?
1A is actually approving me as a qualified purchasing agent for the district. The law allows you to increase your bid threshold from 26,000 to 36,000 if the district has a qualified purchasing agent. You did approve that for Vincentero, so what you're doing now is approving it again for me and appointing me as the qualified purchasing agent. The number 3 and number 5 are agreements with the Union County Services Commission to have them administer for the non-public grants. So these are grants that are given to us by the state of New Jersey for non-public schools in the town of Westfield. So the money really just flows through Westfield. It's not money that we can spend for any public school purposes. So what you're doing is approving a contract with the Services Commission to administer the contract for a fee of 6% of the cost. And again, that's paid for out of the grant money.
Thank you. I'd also note item 14, which are gifts from the Westfield Coalition for the Arts to be used for several things, including the purchase of 14 iPads to be used for instructional tools for the elementary art and music teachers and music staff at Edison and Roosevelt schools, the purchase of textbooks for orchestra writing and arranging classes at Westfield High School, the purchase of a sewing machine for the Edison School art classes, a workshop registration fee for a high school art teacher, purchase of a student tuba for Franklin Elementary School, and the purchase of apparel for the Westfield High School music performances. We very much appreciate these kind of gifts. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments on the finance resolutions?
Rich Mattesik?
Yes.
David Finn?
Yes.
Ann Carey?
Yes.
Jane Clancy?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsta?
Yes.
Jimmy Light?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg? Yes. Mitchell Slater?
Yes.
I would ask the board to note the notes for the record, and then turn to Ann if there's any legislation report this evening.
No report tonight.
Thank you. Any unfinished business to come before the board? Nothing I'm aware of. Any new business? Okay, ad hoc committee reports.
Nothing tonight. We've heard a lot about technology. We'll be meeting soon and considering a lot of the other areas that we're still have to work on.
Thank you. Any liaison reports tonight? Jeannie?
September 5th, I attended the Union County Ed Services Commission board meeting. Nothing out of the ordinary to report. And on September 6th, I joined Jane Clancy and Gretchen Oleg, Dr. Dolan, at the PTC President's meeting. Dr. Dolan gave a very comprehensive summer recap of maintenance projects, technology, student achievement outcomes. There was a significant conversation about the bond that was led by Jane, and the major area of interest by the group was regarding why one vote. So that was the focus of the conversation for the most part. We hope that the presidents are better informed with the conversation. We found that there was, as always, this is the first time this group has gotten together for the year, and very often with the change of leadership in the PTOs of the schools, and then the start of school with the youngsters getting back to school and putting class mothers in place and all of the organizational structures that the PTO has to support, it's understandable that not a lot of current information was available and represented by this group of people. So I hope that we were successful in updating their information and helping them become a little more informed about the bond vote and the requirements for it.
Very good. Thank you.
And all the presidents were also provided with the brochures.
Right.
A stack, a pack of brochures to take back, not to hand out at school, but for individuals who approach them with questions to hand out. So hopefully everyone's better armed with information as a result.
Right.
All right, Roseanne?
I attended the Roosevelt PTSO Executive Board meeting today, and they talked about what they have planned for this year, and it is quite a bit. They have already spoken with Mr. Carey about organizing a bunch of assemblies, cultural arts assemblies, including Soul Street and Signature Project, as well as the Newark Boys Choir from Newark that usually comes to Roosevelt. They already had their picture day. They discussed the success and how to improve the 6th grade orientation. They discussed their club fair day, their welcome back party. So they have lots going on and are ready to have a very successful, I think, year at Roosevelt.
Anyone else? Terrific. I would again recognize the public for questions and/or comments. Seeing no one come to the podium, we do not have a private session this evening, and therefore,